Hi there. Hi there. My name is Balthazar. I'm a writer and a mathematician. After publication of my second novel, Night of Dead Dreams, in 2009, and after a rather exhausting and stressful book tour, I decided to leave my life as a writer and go back to the life that I enjoy much more, as a reader. 21 at the time, I took a summer job teaching mathematics at University of Évora, Portugal, and I wanted to travel to Europe, backpack, and try to read as many books as I can, and try to, make up the lost time. Heavily packed, I was unpleasantly surprised when my father approached me just 10 minutes before the trip, handing me over one more book, saying, "I cannot go to Portugal without reading Portugal's finest." I never heard of the writer, but my father promised me that this book will change my life forever. And of course, I didn't trust him. This book changed my life forever. You want to know more? Let me take you on an adventure.
Hello, Instagram.
Bad boy. Run wild. I'm on a mission and I won't stop. No destination, but it's rough and shy. You gotta let me go. You gotta let me go. You gotta let me go. Run wild. I'm on a mission and I won't stop. No destination.
Teetering and rocking on the slow but romantic trains of Budapest, novel Balthazar and Blimunda by the Portuguese writer Jose Saramago occupied my body and my mind. It was brilliant, different, complex, yet unbelievably simple and pure love story between two peasants in early days of Lisbon. It was a story about power of the human mind, human fight for science and for magical. With absolutely intricate sentence structure that can last for pages, the most shocking detail for me was the ultimate love story doesn't use the word love once in the whole novel. Lying in a 16-bed hostel room in Madrid, I finished the novel after 4 days. I realized I needed to know more, and I booked the famous midnight train to Lisbon. Exactly 10 years later, I'm on an airplane to the country where everything started. Welcome to the homeland of Jose Saramago, Portugal. Jose Saramago was born in 1922 to a family of rural workers of modest means from central Ribatejo section of Portugal. When he was 2 years old, the family moved to Lisbon, where his father worked as a policeman. In his teenage years, economic hardships made it necessary for Saramago to transfer from a regular high school to a vocation school. He would later work at a variety of jobs, including as a mechanic, before turning to writing full-time. After publishing his first novel, Terra do Pecado, at 1947, at the age of 29, to a moderate success, it will take him 19 years to lift the pen again, and 29 years to assemble a marvelous cast of characters driven by extensive plot. In Balthazar and Blimunda, author relies on literally historical information that can be deducted from the character of Blimunda and Baroque history period of Portugal. Same like as his Latin American colleague, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, we get on a first glance historical novel that speaks to all of us in any point of time, in any country. After my backpacking trip through Europe, I went to a library and I didn't get out until I didn't read most of the available translations of Jose Saramago. In his novel The Year of Death of Ricardo Reis, he's bringing one of his big literary influences, Portuguese poet Fernando Pessoa, as a main character. His English translator, Margaret Yulie Costa, says that his seamless narrative voice is meant to sound like a speech. He orchestrates sounds and pauses. She also likens him to the 19th century realist novelist Eca de Queiroz, in tradition of mocking Portugal and making fun of it. The novel, widely seen as a masterpiece, The Year of the Death of Ricardo Reis, gives a human form to one of the poet Fernando Pessoa's pseudonyms or heteronyms, imagining him returning from Brazil from 1936 after Pessoa's death. This is what captured my attention and rewrote the definition of the role as a reader and the role as a writer. If Jose Saramago brought his great literature influence to life as a character in a book, aren't we all doing this all the time with our favorite writers? How many times you saw Hemingway, Tolstoy, or Oscar Wilde as a character while reading their books? Sitting there in the library, I had no doubts. Jose Saramago must be the greatest writer alive, and I needed to meet him. For Saramago, writing was similar to his previous work as a mechanic. Detailed, slow, the job that requires patience. In his big interview for the Paris Review after winning Nobel Prize in Literature, he said, "I'm now writing a book. It would be much more interesting for me to tell you the torture I endure, the difficulty in constructing the characters, the nuances of the complicated narrative. What I mean is that I do what I have to do as naturally as possible. For me, writing is a job. I do not separate the work from the act of writing like two things that have nothing to do with each other. I arrange the words one after another, or one in front of the other, to tell a story or to say something that I consider important or useful, or at least important or useful to me. It is nothing more than this. I consider this my job." One year after I read my first novel by Jose Saramago, I had a ticket to Lisbon, contact of his translator, and a long list of questions. In this time, his novel Blindness captured the attention of the whole world. The story of humanity going blind, fighting for survival, bringing out one of the most delicate metaphors about the current state of the mankind. The novel's vision of how fragile our civilization is and how easily it can collapse makes it an absolute masterpiece. In his interview for the British Guardian, Saramago explained, "I don't see the winner of civilization, but society as it is. With hunger, war, exploitation, we are already in hell. With the collective catastrophe of total blindness, everything surfaces, positive and negative. It is a portrait of how we are. The crux is who gets the power and who doesn't, who controls the food supply and who exploits the rest." Let me analyze one of his sentences together with him. Let me compare my vision to his explanation. Wearing the new dress that she bought yesterday in a shop downtown, Death goes to concert. She's sitting alone in a box and she's looking at the cellist. Just before the lights went down, when the orchestra was waiting for a conductor to come, he noticed her. He wasn't the only musician to do so. Firstly, because she was alone in the box, which, although not rare, wasn't the frequent an occurrence either. Secondly, because she was pretty. Pretty in a very particular, indefinable way that couldn't be put into words, like a line of poetry whose ultimate meaning continually escapes the translator. And finally, because her lone figure, there in the box, surrounded by emptiness and absence on every side, as if she inhabited a void, seemed to be expression of the most absolute solitude. I mean, looking at the sentence, mathematician in me immediately kicks in. I see those descriptions, those properties, like wearing new dress, goes to the concert, looking at the cellist. She was pretty in a very particular way, line of poetry, inhabited. That those are really human properties that actually make us believe of the physical appearance of the death and its fragility, or her fragility. On the other side, we have those really anti-human properties, like completely loneliness, saying alone and alone again, escapes the translator, her lone figure surrounded by emptiness, absence on every side, solitude. If you take a closer look, there is exactly 7 green properties and 7 red ones, making this perfect balance and perfect description of the death as the part of society that is part of all of us, and yet completely inexplicable, making the perfect metaphor for the title of the novel, Death with Interruptions. Let's take a look what Jose Saramago himself said about this very particular sentence. He said, "This passage points to what I believe is one of the main characteristics of my work, accepting that impossible is possible and extracting from that slightly risky premise all the consequences that the imagination can bring to it, even if ordinary logic has to suffer. Proust might have seen death, or thought he did, at the foot of his bed in the guise of a fat woman dressed in black, but death has no substance unless we pushed against the limits of possible to gain access to a different levels of seeing, to inner scenario of the imagined where everything makes sense. In this novel, death buys a dress to wear to a concert. Impossible, you'll say, and I'll respond, yes, but not anymore." In June 2010, I arrived to Lisbon to try to get connection to my favorite writer, only to witness the mourning of the whole nation. Jose Saramago, one of the greatest Portuguese writers, passed away that morning. I sat at a cafe on the street of Lisbon, tired and disappointed. There, I wrote the first paragraph of my next novel. It took me 7 years to finish it. Jose Saramago is one of the characters.